Welcome to the All Pro Football Data Podcast. My name is Jim Cobern, also known as Jimetrics. And today's episode, I have a very, very special guest. And I'll just kind of let him kind of introduce himself. We've been doing draft stuff for probably about a decade at this point, I would say. We've known each other for about that long, probably 9-10 years. Very great. And of course, again, introducing Bill Carroll.
Yes. First of all, I want to say that this is something that I've been hoping would happen for some time now. So this is great. I'm very happy and very excited. This is something that the world needs. The world is healing, Jim. I am very pleased and very proud to, one, call you my friend, and two, call you my my colleague, I guess, in terms of trying to demystify or lay clear and obviously, hopefully, to the world that as complex a game as football may sometimes be, there are things that are, I think, uncontrovertible truths. And there are ways to discover which players are better than other players without it turning into like vituperation and, ox goring and, j'accuse and all the kind of stuff that it turns into. And one of the things I like about things that are quantifiable, Jim, is that they're quantifiable. And you can say, oh, look, here it is.
It is. So like, I really like that guy. Why? I can't measure it, man. It's just something about him.
He's just got that je ne sais quoi.
That je ne sais quoi. Yeah. In terms of that, which that's, of course, with All Pro Football Data, we focus on the data aspects of things. I brought Bill on because of his enormous amount of just general draft knowledge and expertise. I mean, he's been following football for a very long time. As you know, Bill, you were that's the thing, guys. You didn't have to experience this. If you wanted film on somebody on the West Coast, you had to write somebody on the West Coast, become friends with them like a pen pal, and then you would send VHS tapes back and forth so that they could get the games over here and the games over there, because we just have a wealth. People don't realize how easy they have it nowadays. You can watch teams on the West Coast and the East Coast at any time, and that just wasn't the case back when Bill was doing it. So you show that level of dedication back then. What type of dedication do you think the man has when he actually has all this?
It's a little easier now. Yeah. So Kevin Sweeney is a name that still, I guess, conjures, smiles and remembrances in Fresno, California. And I remember I was desperately trying to to see, because if you lived in my part of the country in those days, you wouldn't get to see Kevin Sweeney. It just wasn't going to happen unless you caught a bowl game or something, right? I mean, Fresno State, unfortunately, was not nationally broadcast in the late 70s, early 80s. And so you have these great California quarterbacks. And obviously, I did get to see, John Albert Elway. He was a couple of times nationally broadcast. So I got my little VCR out and grabbed that. But the other two, Steve Clarkson, who most of you now know as a quarterback guru, trainer, whatever, he was a very good quarterback himself at San Jose State. And so I remember literally like horse trading, a tape of guys that I had for people that my friends on the West Coast that I'd made had of, and luckily I'm from a Navy town. So I had friends that would, get shipped out every year actually to, parts of, Florida and Washington and Rhode Island and wherever the Navy was, basically. So that's how I got my fix of West Coast and even some guys in other parts of the country that just weren't nationally broadcast. Yes, so it is easier now, Jim. Thank the Lord.
Yeah. So starting out with the top fives, that we're doing offensive positions. Probably in the future we'll do defensive positions, but there's plenty of offensive players to talk about. Talking about the top five: rookie quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, tackles, guards, centers. In terms of rookies, and then we'll get into the top fives kind of briefly in terms of the NFL, just so in terms of our opinion and just the data as well. Because there is a data way to kind of do that top five, which some people might think is controversial, but we'll see kind of how the data compares to the actual consensus. But in terms of the rookie quarterbacks, because everybody viewed this class as weak. I think the NFL did as well, with only one quarterback taken in the bottom of the first round, which is kind of like taking them in the second round. It really is. I mean, if you're going to wait into the bottom of the first round to take a quarterback, then you're really – it's really like – and based on data, when you look at the bottom first round is pretty much equivalent to the second round in terms of the value that you get typically out of players in that round. But in terms of your top 5, Bill, so taking data out of it, who were your top 5 quarterbacks in this?
Yeah, this was tough for me this year too. There are a lot of guys I liked, and then a lot of those guys are still eligible. They'll be coming out in this next draft. But I think people are too low. Some people are too low on Carson Strong. Now, obviously, his knee is going to be determinative, but he's right now, by number 5. He could easily be higher. I just think that if he gets a chance, and of course, I know people sometimes don't give chances to undrafted free agents, but the one thing that makes me feel good about him is they gave him a lot of guaranteed money for an undrafted player. Yeah. So when a team, he literally got more guaranteed money than a lot of 7th, even some 6th round drafted players. So I think they like him enough to keep him around. So that would be my number 5. And then, Matt Corral is a fascinating player. There's some off-field stuff with him. He, got kicked out of Oaks Christian. Not kicked out. Let me put this. He transferred under a bit of a cloud when he left Oaks Christian. He didn't get kicked out. Let me be correct. After a fight with Wayne Gretzky's son, and finds his way to, it's sort of like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air in reverse, Jim. Imagine that a young man from Bel-Air ends up getting in a fight and then goes to West Philadelphia. But in this case, the West Philadelphia he went into was Long Beach, California, and went to the legendary Long Beach Poly High School, which has given us so many great players, and of course also Snoop Dogg. But a long list of great players from Cal Poly. Not Cal Poly, he's not Cal Poly, but from Long Beach Poly High School. Has a really good finish to his career, and then finds his way eventually to Ole Miss. And he and Lane Kiffin, that was a great combination. I just think that he needs to stop running like. I think he thinks he's 240 pounds. I've seen him take on linebackers like shoulder to chest in the open field. Sometimes with just throwing shoulder, no less. That's not what we want. That's not the flavor we savor around here, neighbor. So we need you to learn how to do that. Like, Kenny Pickett with all those moves he's got. Study some of the stuff. Don't the little pop-up thing. Don't do that. But do the just get down thing. But I think that he has a chance. I like some things about him. I'm not in love with him, but I like. And then my number 3 is Desmond Ridder, and I just think Desmond Ridder is one that's the best mix of everything. But he's not great in any one thing. He has an above-average arm. He's a terrific athlete. I'm sure you've seen the testing numbers. He's ironically enough going to be, getting a chance to be around guys like a guy like Marcus Mariota, who he's essentially just a taller and I guess slightly lighter version of. But they're very close. Like they're athletically very similar. He has a slightly stronger arm, and he's slightly more raw in the way he struggles sometimes to see the field. But essentially, you're getting another Marcus Mariota in so many ways. And then I have Pickett, my number 2, and 2 things. One is I'm not like completely wedded to age, the same way some people are, but I'm not in love with the fact that he's a much older prospect. And I don't know how much better he's going to get. And though his hand size thing may not be the biggest deal in the world, I think some people may make more of it than it is. I did chart his rainy and windy games, and there was a significant. He didn't look like the same guy in windy and rainy games. I'll say that much. He's in some of the games he still looked pretty decent, but he wasn't looking like that tack driving accuracy that put the ball exactly, because that's the thing that made him what he was. In good weather games, he would just carve you up if you weren't getting pressure on him. And I'll never forget watching the last game I watched on both he and Howell. That's right, Howell. Oof. Okay. This is what makes it tough.
Yeah.
So I mean, if I was allowed to have a tie, Howell would probably be tied in there too. But I'll just stick with what I said. But I think Howell's going to be better than people think also. But they're comparing him to the wrong quarterback. They keep comparing him to Baker Mayfield. He's not Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, he's not Baker Mayfield. I mean, he's short. He's got a beard.
Right. I mean, it's sort of like if they both robbed a bank. I can see why they would pick him up, thinking they might have seen Baker Mayfield.
He's not Baker Mayfield.
But he's.
Now, if you just put them in a room and you have them like tilt their head to the side,
right? I could see how if like somebody's had a certain number of Red Bull and tequilas and they went home with him, they could say, "I went home with Baker Mayfield." I could see how that might happen.
Yeah, it's kind of like when I went to Oakland Raiders practice in Napa Valley, and I was going to go see it, and there were these like maybe 4 drunk women, and they were like, "Hey, you're late for practice. The practice started. You're late." And I was like, I'm not on the team, but okay. You know, if you had those women, they'd be able to go, all right, that's Baker Mayfield.
That's right.
But if you look at everything else, it's not the case.
Yeah. I mean, I'm when I think of him, I think more of like a right-handed version of Mark Brunell than I think of Baker Mayfield. And though Baker Mayfield was a decent athlete, I think Sam Howell, I mean, once again, I don't think he actually did all the testing. I don't think he did. Yeah, but
he's better.
I think he would have tested more like Brunell than he tested. I mean, Baker is a guy who can move around a little bit. Sam Howell can legitimately hurt you with his feet.
Yeah. I mean, he's a better athlete. I mean,
he's just flat out better.
He's just better in terms of that. So
I feel bad about not managing to squeeze him in there, but I will just proceed. But yeah, so Kenny Pickett is, I mean, the term pro ready always makes me a little bit, but it makes sense. He's played a whole lot of football.
4 years.
Yeah. Played a lot of football. And literally he's in the same facility as Steelers. I mean, it wasn't much of it's like, oh yeah, just move your stuff over from there to there. I mean, I feel like it was just how it ended up happening. They bumped him in the hallway. Hey, Kenny, how's it going? Oh,
yeah, how's it going? No, I'm good. Working on that. Yeah, but so based on the data.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so based on the data, so this is after the draft. Okay, so you're taking into account draft status. Because the top quarterback in this draft, pre-draft, was Jake Cohen, the quarterback of Notre Dame. Which I know a lot of people are just kind of like, huh? Jake Cohen?
Well, I've seen Jake Cohen play, and the problem I have with him is he looks like he should be an NFL quarterback. He doesn't play like he should be an NFL quarterback. Okay.
And I will again, data film-wise, you could say that. I get that. But statistically speaking, 90+ percentile in the 2 seasons that he played at Notre Dame.
Okay.
And if you look at other quarterbacks with that similar profile, you're looking at guys like Alex Smith. You're looking at guys like Aaron Rodgers, kind of on the high end, of course. Tom Brady, in terms of 90+ percentile data. So now, is he going to be given a shot? That's the biggest thing. And that's where draft status comes in, is because you could be a guy who gets drafted in the 6th round, and it takes you 4 years to see the football field because the coaches didn't believe in you to begin with, you know, in terms of where you were drafted. But this is kind of where the top 5 are right now. So Desmond Ritter's number 1. Matt Corral.
Oh, really? Yeah. I'm a fan of his. I like him.
Yeah. Ritter, Corral, Willis are in that same range in terms of potential success. So you could kind of rank them however you want to rank them data-wise, but they're kind of that same.
I got you.
Bailey Zapp would be number 4, and then Kenny Pickett would be the 5th option. As they say, I don't know if they're going to give him the 5th option, but
yes. And there's things I like about Malik Willis. I just think he's going to need some time.
Yeah.
To develop. Obviously his career begins at Auburn. There were some people, and you know this, obviously, there were some people who still believe he should have won the job there and have never quite gotten over it or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, clearly he wasn't picking up some things as quickly as some of the other quarterbacks they had there. So that's, it is what it is. But, he and Euphrase are a meeting of the hearts and minds, and he goes to Liberty, and he's the offense, basically at Liberty. Once again, another guy who can run well enough to stress a defense that way, has a very strong arm. Not Josh Allen, people. Slow your roll there, but he has a strong arm. Not even quite Steve McNair. Like, that's pump the brakes a little bit there. But if you want to, a person who I think he's comparable in terms of, ability to throw a deep ball and things like that. Jeff Blake, is a guy that I think is probably a better comparison.
Yeah, Blake,
more athletic, but a similar thrower of the deep ball, and a guy who has similar strengths and similar weaknesses. Jeff Blake with a nitrous oxide bottle, that helps. But yeah, I think he has a chance, and I think he's sort of in the right place too. And we talked about this. I mean, for quarterbacks particularly, where you end up is so important. It's everything, really.
It's huge. It's huge. Because even if you have, so the one guy I kind of go back to a little bit is when you look at the quarterback for I'm trying to remember what his name was, but he is now on the USFL team.
Oh, wait a second, hold on. Are you talking about Paxton Lynch?
Not Paxton Lynch.
Oh, okay.
Although he's part of this whole story, though. Kyle Slaughter. Okay.
Oh, I still am not over the fact that he's never really gotten a shot. He was playing at one point rings around the other quarterbacks when he was the Vikings camp. Oh, okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
So Kyle Slaughter, and this is just to give people, and again, I'm not trying to say that Kyle Slaughter is the greatest quarterback ever, but this is the basic facts with him. The preseason that he played on the Denver Broncos, he was the best quarterback statistically out of every single quarterback in the preseason. Now, again, I know it's preseason.
Yeah.
You're playing against scrubs and other people, but you're still the best quarterback against every other practice squad, basically.
Right.
And to a certain extent. He gets shipped off. They bring in Brock Osweiler for whatever reason. I don't know why. And then I even made a video on this channel about the Broncos quarterback situation and basically said it's not good. Even with Jake Locker, even with Brock Osweiler, even with all these other players, you don't have your future here. You shipped your future away in Kyle Slaughter because of reasons. And it's just so weird because, the Broncos have given inferior quarterbacks, I would say, opportunities to
shout out to
Trevor Siemian. But yeah, situation is definitely a big thing. So the last quarterback kind of where you were talking about in Sam Howell, I think the situation that he's in right now is good. Yep. Because most quarterbacks, because again, he's very young too. He's 22 years old, which in quarterback years is like a little baby. It really is. Most 22-year-old quarterbacks do not do that well at all. Yep. Bad statistically. Now, sometimes that's because of the team that they went to, but it doesn't really matter who it is. If you're a 22-year-old quarterback, you're just not going to do well. Yep. You end up starting. So I think him going to the Washington Commanders is a good situation because Carson Wentz is Carson Wentz. And I think people are starting to live up to the fact he's not Andrew Luck. He's not the top five, not top five, excuse me, but the 6'5".
We're having is he even Nick Foles, right? That's now more the discussion is he
not really even Nick Foles. From that perspective. So Sam Howell, I think, is in a great situation to where even though the other quarterbacks, again, the top five that are on right here, I think he went to a good situation where he's going to get an opportunity to start from that kind of perspective. Pretty good. So going to the running back position. So we're going to get into rookie running backs right now. Based on the data, and this is taking in draft status and everything else like that. Yeah. Breece Hall is number one, of course. Very similar to, I'm not saying he's Jonathan Taylor, but he just tested in that same sort of area.
I'm more see Matt Forte when I watch him, but yes, I'm a fan.
Yeah, but definitely a guy that could end up being a top 5, top 10 running back at the NFL level. Rashad White in number 2. Kenneth Walker III at number 3. Isaiah Spiller at number 4. And then Tyler Algier.
Algier, yes.
Algier, yeah, at number 5. So that's the data. So that's what the data likes. Who are your top 5?
Well, it's a slightly different order, the same 5. No, I take it back. Algier didn't quite make my 5. He just missed, but largely the same. So I felt like a fool holding on to Spiller as my number 3, and now I feel less like a fool because obviously he had, apparently a pro day that caused like blindness and sterility, male pattern baldness.
Yeah.
So those who survived, I guess, looking upon his pro day are still, shaken by it, I guess. But you go back both to the tape and to the production, you say, this guy's an NFL running back. Yeah. So I'm sticking to that. But my number 1 is Kenneth Walker III. My number 2 is Breece Hall. My number 3 is still Isaiah. No, I take it back. Sorry. I take it back. I did have Rashad White number 2, and then so it was actually Kenneth Walker, and then so I had Breece Hall 3rd, and then I had Spiller. Thank you. So Spiller was my 3. He got pushed down to 4, and then I had I had Devontae Price was my 5.
Okay. Devontae Price, huh?
Should I feel bad about that? Should I?
No, you shouldn't feel bad about it. You shouldn't feel bad about it. It's just a 2020 season, 2021.
I know he's old. I know. That's the thing that bothers me. Is he thought, and I understand his thinking. It's like, well, I'm at a smaller school. They haven't seen me enough. I agree. He should have come out earlier.
Because believe me, there was a lot of the 2020 season, as disruptive as it was for everybody else,
yes.
The people that didn't even play in the game, as disruptive as it was very disruptive for football players because you had guys who played only 4 or 5 games.
Yep. And
when you're doing market share data, you kind of have all this information. You're like, what do I do with this? Because it's such it's just not, you can't compare a guy who plays a full season versus a guy who plays 5 games. So it just kind of affects those things from that perspective.
Yeah. And the other guy who just missed was Pierre Strong. Yeah. So Algier and Strong were my 2, just missed. But yeah, I liked Price because, and once again, I've heard people bounce around comparisons like Latavius Murray, and I don't hate that comparison. I just think that he's not quite that. But I do think he's a guy who's going to be a contributor, and because of the way the running back position works now, I don't think he'll ever be a quote unquote bell cow. But I don't know if any of these guys are ever going to be a bell cow. Quite frankly, the term almost needs to be retired at this point. I mean, Derrick Henry, I guess, deserves it. And I mean, Josh Jacobs did for a little while, but now it looks like they're going to take it away from him.
Yeah, because he never was that guy. I mean, they tried to do it, and then
they tried to, and then what happened? He broke. I mean,
because he was never used like that at Alabama. I mean, you're talking about a guy that
or even in high school, really.
Never really, yeah.
Right. I mean, usually, even some of these guys that end up being, in a timeshare in college, were usually guys that got the ball like crazy in high school. He didn't even get the ball like crazy in high school.
Derrick Henry, on the other hand, high school, gave him the ball like crazy. Alabama, gave him the ball like crazy. NFL, give him the ball like crazy. And when he wasn't doing well as a player, is because they weren't giving the ball like crazy.
Exactly.
Now they start giving him the ball all the time, and now you get into a rhythm and stuff like that.
The problem is that people have fallen into this thinking. I fight against this all the time, Jim, and I need to carry you in my hip pocket. But people constantly say, but he has, the whole wear on the tires thing. Okay, check the Hall of Fame, right? Everybody in there got the ball like nobody's damn business. O.J. Simpson. I mean, what's the great quote? He's not in the union and the ball's not heavy. I mean, they just gave these people the ball like it was a job. I mean, it kind of was a job. I mean, Marcus Allen. Look at the how much he got.
Marcus Allen. Yeah.
Campbell, Peyton. I mean, essentially, Jim Brown. Pick one.
It's a ridiculous argument. It's just a ridiculous argument. You got people that say, well, again, all the greatest running backs you could think of had that season where a lot of people would go, man, I just don't know, man. He had 300 touches or 500 touches or whatever it was, and I don't know, man. I don't know if Marcus Allen's going to make it, man.
Barry Sanders just fall off a cliff after
Barry Sanders. I don't know if Barry Sanders is going to make it, man. After that Oklahoma State season, he's small, he's a slow guy.
Right. I mean, people were using that logic in those days, but because people wanted guys who got the ball all the darn time in those days.
Yeah.
Oh, give me that guy. Give me Billy Sims. Give me Herschel Walker. Give me Bo Jackson. Give me the guy that gets the ball all the time.
Give me the guy that gets the ball all the time. Because there's a reason why. There's a reason why they get the ball all the time, because they're the best player. I mean, it comes down to that. Now, some coaches are stupid. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to say stupid, but dumb or
they're not making the best use of their available assets, is how I put it.
Inefficient.
Yes, inefficient.
If you have a team and the best player on your team is this guy, why aren't you giving this guy all your touches, all your carries, using them as much as you possibly can? It's just simple. You got to get out. You got to get out of trying to be goofy and creative and, well, I want to do this with my offense. I'm going to have the fullback, he's going to run a route over here, and I'm going to have the tight end. He's going to pull out over, he's going to go over, you got to get out of your mind. Who's your best player? Marcus Allen. Who are you going to give the football to? Marcus Allen. Simple as that.
That's what I give the late great John McKay credit for, because he would look at his roster and be like, "Oh, this guy's the best player on the team. He's getting the ball.
Give him the ball. Giving the ball to your best players on your team, good things happen.
Yep.
When you start mixing things up, and the reason why you end up with those plays where like the ball gets fumbled, or you try to do a screen pass to your third string, fourth string wide receiver because you're trying to do something cute, that's when mistakes happen.
Yep. I could not agree more. I really like this running back class more than most people do. And while I don't think there's going to be any like superstars, any, 4 or 5, Pro Bowl. Well, no, 4 or 5, maybe 4 or 5 Pro Bowls. No 4 or 5 all pro guys. There might be a 4 or 5 Pro Bowl guy somewhere in there. But I'm thinking more like a 3. There might be a couple of 3-time Pro Bowlers in this running back class.
Yeah.
But solid starting running backs. I think there's going to be probably 6-7 solid starting running backs from this class. And I think Price has a chance. I think Pierre Strong has a chance. I think Algier has a chance. I feel really good about both Breeze and Walker. And though it gave me a scare, like I said, with the, Area 51, they had to cordon off, the area after the Texas A&M Pro Day and treat people for shock and hypothermia and exposure. But I still think he will end up being a good NFL running back. Yeah. So I still hold on hope for Isaiah Spiller, but I'll admit he gave me a shock. He was my run back 1 at one point going into the season, but that's where Kenneth Walker started Walkering. And obviously Breece Hall did what he did, but that was my preseason number 1 was Isaiah Spiller. And though he didn't have quite the season I thought he would, and obviously, like I said, the biblically unpleasant pro day.
So the last running back I want to talk about is situational. This is totally situational. So Isaiah Pacheco. Okay.
Oh, well, he's stupid fast.
He is stupid fast. And the thing is, he went to the best possible situation you could think of, the Kansas City Chiefs, because they have no talent at running back. They drafted, again, I don't want to keep bringing it up, but they drafted Clyde Edwards over Jonathan Taylor, which is probably one of the biggest whiffs that you could imagine. It's just off. Now, I can see what they were trying to do. They're trying to get that small, chunky kind of looking running back that can catch the football in the backfield and do stuff like that. And yet there was actually a cheaper version of him in James Robinson, who went to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who does similar things and has actually been able to,
but it's done them better.
at this point, they had a better career.
Yes.
But Pacheco, production-wise, that's the biggest issue with him. But I think when you look at his athleticism, we look at the rest of the running backs that are there, like Ronald Jones, he really hasn't been able to really put it together at all in his career. Derek Gore, not really. And then, of course, you look at some of the other running backs they have there. Pacheco, to me, again, I'm not a big fan of him as a pre-draft prospect. But I think he went to the right situation because it just is how it is.
It's enormous. Yeah. Situation's everything.
You go to the right place, they're going to utilize you for that situation. I feel like he may not end up being a top 5 running back long term, but I think in the short term, he might be that running back that is given starting duties, is used on sweeps and different kinds of stuff like that. And I think they might be able to kind of get, he might be one of those guys that everybody goes, wow, did you see Pacheco? And then everybody goes out and gets him, and then he kind of falls off the radar after a couple of years.
Right. But if it's sort of like with Patriots running backs, if you pick the right time to toss him into your fantasy lineup, maybe it's a bye week and maybe they've got someone get injured who plays ahead of him. He goes off for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, found money. And I kind of feel like that's sort of what Isaiah Pacheco is. He's a found money guy. Maybe you're playing daily fantasy and you really splurged at some other position and you need to go cheap, at flex or whatever, and you toss him in there and, he's the kind of guy that will get some swing routes, make somebody miss, and then 60 yards, touchdown.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the Chiefs know how to use those types of guys. So
they do.
Just where you kind of go, do I trust Andy Reid? Or do I trust my data? And sometimes with Andy Reid, like Tyreek Hill, for example, because there was nothing other than the fact he ran really fast, because that's all he was. He was just an athlete.
Yep.
You look at Pacheco, he could be the Tyreek Hill of
the running back version. Right?
Running backs.
I'm with you on that. Could be.
Could be. Could not, but could be.
I don't think it'll be to the extent of Tyreek Hill because one, we just don't believe in letting one running back do that for whatever reason. Unless if they had Jonathan Taylor, maybe they believe it.
But they didn't do that for whatever reason.
You remember I kept mocking him to them too in my mocks.
Yeah. Yeah. So going to rookie wide receivers. So this is probably where there's the biggest debate. Everybody has their favorite guys. Me as a data guy, I don't really get into too much of that just because, again, I'm just looking at the numbers. There's a lot of – it doesn't matter the ranking. It doesn't matter how you rank them, in terms of the data because it really just becomes – they kind of blend in together. But in terms of the top 5 in this class, Treylon Burks, Drake London, Olave, Wilson – and Dotson were the 5 that data-wise kind of checked out the most. Williams was like at 6. Moore, and this is just because of draft status, because Moore ended up in the second round.
Yep.
He ended up in that kind of lower level. Robinson, Watson, Tolbert, Bell, Shakir, just kind of get down kind of a little bit of the list. But in terms of the rookie wide receivers, to me, even though Moore kind of tested out as like the 7th best wide receiver based on the data, I think he went to the best situation out of all those guys because he has the best quarterback in the NFL. Yep. To me, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. He's consistently been a top 3 in terms of finishing.
And I think the data kind of backs you up on this, Jim.
Yeah. Josh Allen. Everybody wants to talk about Josh Allen. Josh Allen had one season where he was a top 5 quarterback. And then last year, he became really bad in terms of his efficiency. Mahomes has consistently been that guy, except for last year. And they did the reason why they shook up the wide receiver core is because of what last year was like, is that they just weren't the same kind of unit that they were in the past. So they're trying to retool things, But in terms of the rookie wide receivers, who were your favorites?
Roughly the same. Once again, so like the running backs, mostly the same people, just different order. It was Olave, London, Wilson, more Burks.
Mm-hmm.
And then I take it back. Sorry, Jameson Williamson. So it was more Jameson Williams. Burks just missed actually for me. Close. He was very close. I had him in there at one point, and then he sort of got pushed out by the emergence of Jameson Williamson, who wasn't in my preseason top 5 and pushed his way into it. I like a lot of the receivers. I'm a huge Shakir fan. I really like Jalen Tolbert. I think Jalen Tolbert, Dynasty people are probably all over this. I think Jalen Tolbert's going to have a really good career at Dallas.
The Cowboys actually got 2. So they got Tolbert again, and he went to the best situation because the Cowboys are retooling things a little bit.
Yep.
And they also have Freifogel. And again, I know you may not be the biggest fan of Freifogel.
No, I am the biggest fan of Freifogel. I am literally the biggest fan of Tyrese Freifogel you're ever going to meet. Mm-hmm. So I've been bothering people about Tyrese Freifogel for years. Ask Jim, the other Jim Nagy. Speaking of Nagy, I was Nagy with him about Tyrese Freifogel. I feel bad about that. I probably shouldn't have done it, but it's okay. It's too late now. But yes, ask him about what I've been about having to hear about Tyrese Freifogel from me. So here's what I remember about Tyrese Freifogel. And I'm not trying to call him Devontae Adams. That would be crazy. He really does kind of remind me of Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
Devontae Adams had a really good quarterback in college.
Oh, yeah, he did. What was that guy's? Derek Carr?
Something like that. Yeah.
Derek Carew, I think. It was Derek Carr.
Yeah, something like that. And he's had guys like Peyton Ramsey, Michael Penix, some other dude when both got hurt. But all of them were terrible, Jim.
Yeah.
He's never seen really good, efficient quarterback play. It's been from below average to, and he still managed to be productive. I think he's going to be an enormous steal. I am such a big fan of Tyrese Freifogel. It makes me so smart. Feel smart, at least. It makes me feel so smart to hear you say his name. Oh, my gosh, am I a big fan of him. And he really does remind me of Devontae Adams.
Yeah. Well, pulling up his data, so Freifogel tested kind of like Treylon Burks in terms of his testing, in terms of explosive, like basically being elite explosiveness, so 90+ percentile explosiveness, above average speed, flexibility not as well, but that's a good, that's like Dwayne Bowe, Des Bryant, in terms of those types of guys. So guys that are explosive, fast, but not the most flexible.
Sure.
In terms of that. But the biggest thing to me is when you look at the production. So if you look at MSY, MSTY, which is total, basically all-purpose market share, touchdown market share, TD percentage is a nose for the football. So how often when he touched the football do you end up in the end zone? That's basically what that number is. And then RAV, which is the average yards per reception. Freifogel on the Cowboys is between him and Gallup. He's kind of like the third best wide receiver in terms of all those kind of numbers. When you just look at the whole depth chart.
It's perfect for the power slot role.
Yeah.
So if indeed Tolbert ends up becoming the Z and CeeDee Lamb is the X, I know he's got some bodies ahead of him still, but I could really see Freifogel beginning to push to get some reps in that, and like I said, that sort of power slot role. I think once again, if you're a dynasty player particularly, he might be sort of a stash this year, but stop me if you've heard this before. The Dallas is going to have to shed some salary cap here pretty soon, Jim. And so my guess is at least one of their receivers is going to have to go someplace. And when that happens, I think he moves up and becomes, at least a number 3.
Yeah. So so in terms of rookie, so again, that's a situational thing too. Is the Cowboys are kind of retooling things a little bit in terms of their wide receiver core. And Freifogel, Tolbert, those guys easily can kind of step in. And especially Tolbert, because Tolbert's done it for so long, in terms of
super productive,
consistently being a productive guy. So that's kind of where that kind of situation goes. So moving towards tight end. So tight end is a little. I don't know how you feel about the tight end class. Based on data, there wasn't really any elite tight ends, which is in terms of just positions. Tight ends like one of the hardest to get elite. Because you have like maybe 2 to 3 guys that are great players at the tight. I'm talking about elite. I'm talking about guys like Rob Gronkowski, guys like Travis Kelce, guys of that ilk. You get maybe 1 or 2 of those guys every 10 years.
Right.
And everybody else is
a bunch of Darren Wallers where it's a situation, they change positions, they, things happen. We'll see what happens with guys like Hawkinson. We'll see what happens. Even a guy like was a quarterback at Virginia Tech. You're
talking about Logan Thomas.
Logan Thomas, right. I mean, you might get a Logan Thomas out of this class. You might get, some of these guys you might not see coming because they were a wide receiver before, or they were, whatever before.
Yeah.
There's guys I like, though. I like Daniel Bellinger in this class. I think he becomes more like a high-end tight end 2 than like a dominant, or even a lower-end tight end 1. But I think he's going to hang around the league for 8 to 10 years. Isaiah Likely is a guy that I'm sort of nervous about now. He came in physically lighter and yet still slower than it was not a combination I was hoping for.
Yeah.
I was okay with him being lighter or being slower than expected. I didn't love both. But I think he'll end up still, once again being in the mix. I don't think I'll be the man. Let me think. Let me look at this tight end class. There's a lot of, Island and Misfit Toys types, right? Where the ones that can really catch the ball aren't quite the size you want. The ones that are really big don't really do a great job of catching the ball. The ones who can really run, once they've caught it, aren't great at running routes. The ones who are great at running routes don't do much after they've caught it. There's not that one tight end you put it, oh man, that guy's got everything. That guy wasn't in this class. Yeah, I'll say that much. Tight ends that I liked. Let's see. Well, okay. So I will preface this by saying this to say, and I mentioned already Likely and Bellinger. Those are guys that I liked. Bellinger more than Likely, though I do like Likely. I also, Iowa let me down this year. There's no Iowa tight end to like. But I think Ferguson ends up hanging around the league once again. Probably, he just missed my 5. I think he ended up at 6. I should have probably pulled my rankings up, Jim, instead of going off memory. But I think I had him. I think he just missed my top 5. I believe I had. Oh, Dulcich, I believe, was my 3.
Okay.
Who else did I have up there? Likely, I believe, was my 5. Bellinger was my. No. Dulcich was my 4. No, I was right. Bellinger was my 4. Dulcich was my 3. And then my 2 was. Who was my 2? What was my number 2?
Okay, so I'll give you the top 5 data ones. Okay, and then maybe one of the ones in the data.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Show up. So.
Oh, thank you. There he is. Woods.
Yeah. Oh, where?
There he is. Woods. Woods was my number 2. Bribe. There. McBride was my number. Yay. There. Trey McBride was number 1. I think he was everybody's number 1, actually. And then Woods. I liked James Mitchell, but I didn't like the fact he couldn't stay healthy. And then, I had Dulcich, and I had Bellinger and Likely. Otten and Kolar were like my 7 and 8, I think. Okay.
Okay. So, in terms of the data, the data kind of shook out with McBride at number 1, Woods at number 2, and Woods is probably out of all the quarterbacks, or not quarterbacks, but tight ends, in this class. He probably has the best he's the most similar to Jimmy Graham.
In
terms of not being super productive, but having the athleticism traits, if you will, in terms of being tall, lengthy, those types of things.
Yep.
Position. James Mitchell was number 3. Dulcich 4. 5 was Charlie Kolar from Iowa State. But none of the tight ends in this class really tested out to be like elite players. I think McBride, closest to him, would be like Eric Ebron.
Yep.
In terms of McBride. And then the rest, again, with Jelani Woods, Jimmy Graham is like, again, kind of I'm not going to say it's a stretch, but Jimmy Graham was very much like an outlier type guy.
Yes. Right.
In terms of work,
because you can't bet. Well, you can, I guess, bet on that, but it's a bad.
Bet on it,
it's a tough.
You're going to be like this. You could be like, kind of 20 hands ago.
It's drawing to an inside straight with your house on the line.
Yeah. And then I would say that Cade Otton. So this is the interesting thing. So this is another situational guy. Okay. Cade Otton is going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yep.
Their tight ends, Gronkowski. I don't really. Is he back?
I mean, he hasn't announced a decision yet, so we'll know at some point.
Yeah.
He'll probably make his decision after training camp if I'm just guessing here.
Yeah. But in terms of the tight ends, Otton is just interesting to me because his production was really great. He didn't really get a chance to do any testing this year because of injuries and stuff like that.
Right.
But if you look at his production, he was a 90-plus percentile production guy. Size-wise, has kind of all the traits you're looking for. And he's going to a situation where if you take Gronkowski out of it, right? If you take him out of it, he could potentially become the starting tight end in Tampa Bay.
Yep.
Just for the fact, and if you have a guy like Tom Brady, of course, which who knows how much longer he's going to play, he's probably going to play until he's
right. Well, the other guys, Kokeft is a blocker basically.
Yeah.
I think he might make the team, but he has a almost essentially a blocker. And then the Ben BC kid is a small schooler who had some interesting pro day testing. He may end up a practice squad guy as they sort of get him bigger and stronger and develop him into an NFL type. Cameron Brate, I think, ends up being tight end 1 at least as the season begins, and I think Otton eventually becomes tight end 2, probably sooner rather than later.
Yeah. So we got about maybe 10 more minutes just because after this I gotta have to close it up. But
yep,
we get to the offensive line. So in terms of the data, so I'll get through the top 5 guys: a tackle, guard, center, and then I kind of group them all together a little bit because everybody has their favorite offensive lineman for the most part, at least with me. So even though there is a tackle, I go, yeah, he gets started at tackle, but I like Quentin Nelson. It's like one of those types of situations. And offensive line.
If you have a chance to take Larry Allen, you take Larry Allen, and you worry about where to play him later.
Yeah. You don't really care about position as much. But the top tackles in this particular class, Ekwonu, Tyler Smith, Trevor Penning, Evan Neal, Charles Cross were kind of in the 5. All those guys have starter to Pro Bowl potential. At guard,
same guys, just different order for me. Yeah.
Yeah. At guard, Cole Strange was number 1. Zion Johnson.
So here's the difference, though. I had Zach Tom as a tackle.
Okay.
I didn't have him listed as guard. So he's in my top 5, but he's a tackle for me.
Okay. And I can see that because he has the athleticism. He can play either or.
Yep.
He was a 90-plus percentile athlete. So he kind of works out that way. Ed Ingram at 3, Kenyon Green at number 1. A lot of that was draft status. He was a first-round guard.
Right.
So pre-draft wise, I wouldn't have taken him as a first-round guy, but it happened. So there's a more likely chance he's going to stick around for a lot longer. Even if he's bad, he's going to stay in the NFL a lot longer than if he was drafted lower. And then at center, Tyler Lindenbaum, Cam Jurgens at 2, Luke Fortnier, Luke Wattenberg, and then there actually was a 7th rounder in Dawson Deep.
He was a really good athlete, though. Like a terrific
he did well. Yeah, he's pretty athletic. So, But in terms of offensive linemen, who were kind of your favorites?
Yeah, so almost exactly. Now I had the older Tulsa guard, Chris Paul, made my top 5 guards. That I know he didn't make yours. But other than that, and I had Zach Tom a tackle instead of a guard. But other than that, it's the same people, just slightly different order. Amongst guards, I think I had Zion Johnson. I had Chris Paul. He was my 3. No. Yeah, Kenyon Green, Chris Paul. Let me see. Who else did I have amongst my guards? That's it. Ingram, right? Ingram, I think, was my 5. So I'm just forgetting my number 4. Throw the guards up there again. I'm missing one.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so got Strange.
Strange. There it is. Nicole Strange.
Okay.
And obviously him going, as early as he did.
That helps him.
It helps him a lot. I'm sure it was a surprise even to him.
Yeah. Because draft status is a big driver for the ranking. Again, for success.
Yes. Right.
It's a big part of it.
Yep.
So that's kind of what kind of pushes them up a little bit.
I'd agree more. I had Iguanum 1. I had Neil, somebody, and then Cross. Let's see. Who was my number 3? Throw the tackles back up there again. I had Iguanum. I had
Trevor Penning, Evan Neal, Charles.
Yep. So Neal was my 2. Then I had Smith. Then I had Penning. And then I had Zach Tom. Okay. Zach Tom was my number 5 because I had him listed as tackle.
Yeah. And nothing wrong with that. Again, he with 90+ percentile athlete and everything. So
he could play, and it helps him also, is that he could play pretty much any position along the offensive line.
Yeah. All right. So with all that out of the way, so we're going to do a quick top 5 NFL positions. So data-wise, so this is going to be interesting. So this is based on the data. So just to give a brief explaining, so this is the average of the last 3 years in terms of their quarterback data in the NFL. For the top 5 in the NFL, Deshaun Watson is at number 1, Russell Wilson at 2, Mahomes at 3, Aaron Rodgers at 4, and Dak Prescott at 5. Again, this is an average over the last, actually not 3 seasons, 5 seasons for these guys. So based on that, who are your top 5 quarterbacks? Like once the season starts,
Patrick LeVon Mahomes is my number 1. Yeah. Aaron Charles Rodgers is my number 2. Yeah. Russell Carrington Wilson is my number 3. Mm-hmm. Then it gets interesting. Those are easy. Like I didn't have to really think about those. One iota. Then probably have Deshaun. And then then I have then I have Justin. Come on, Bill. Herbert. Thank you, Justin Herbert. And once again, the last one was difficult, but I ended up settling on, despite the fact that I think this is his last year of being this good, but Thomas, probably because he retire again, for real this time, Thomas Edward Patrick Brady. I think that for real this time, he retires.
For real this time?
I think for real this time.
Okay.
He retires.
You don't think he's going to go to the Jets to go on a revenge tour?
Yeah, revenge tour. Yes, that would be awesome if he did that. But I think he's finally done.
Okay.
I think that
I'm calling it now. The NFL needs it. They deserve it. They deserve Tom Brady to go to the Jets and beat the Patriots 2 times a year. They really do. And go to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl and just be like, ta-da, I did it on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I went to one of the worst teams in the NFL and I took them to the Super Bowl. Just put a little.
That does feel like a movie script. If he did that, then yes, I would guess I could stop pushing back against the he's the greatest of all time thing, because I guess there'd be no point. Yeah. But here's the thing about what he does and how he does it. one, he's been very smart in choosing these situations. He went to an almost ideal situation with a offensive group of coaches that wanted to collaborate. Not I'm going to say they didn't want to coach him. They did want to coach him, but they wanted to collaborate with him. They wanted to talk to him and pick his brain, and and it not at all a bad idea to do that. Aaron Charles Rodgers finally got a collaborator, right? After all the years of sort of butting heads with his head coach, they finally got someone who wanted to sort of, figure certain things out with him, but still the front office and he apparently are still beefing. So that is what that is. But I think he'll, once again, the pettiness that much like, we talk about the Brady will fuel him to have a great, great year this year, especially people doubting him because they didn't have Devontae Adams anymore. We'll show them. And then, I'll tell you another guy who sort of just missed my list, but we talked about him earlier when we talked about Devontae Adams in college. I think Derek Carr is a top 7 or 8 quarterback this season. I think he goes for about 4,100 or so yards this year. I think he throws about 34, 35, maybe even 36 touchdowns, about 7 to 9 interceptions. And then, just for fun, gives you about 447 yards rushing and a couple of rushing touchdowns. I think that's obviously we all talk about the AFC West being must-see television. It really will be this year. The quarterback play, for the most part, is going to be amazing. It's going to be so much fun watching the AFC West.
Yeah. All right, and we'll get to running backs real quick. So this is kind of a little bit crazier, but the top 5 running backs, let me just take this graphic off.
Yep. I have the same guys, different order.
Yeah. So, so data-wise, Najee Harris is number 1.
Eckler higher.
It's mainly because he was number 1. Only 1 year of production, I should say. Jonathan Taylor, number 2. Dalvin Cook, 3. Derrick Henry, 4. Alvin Kamara, 5. And there are some other guys who kind of fall into that mix of guys like Nick Chubb,
My order is only slightly different. So Montgomery is we have Montgomery. I have Eckler, and I have Jonathan Taylor's my number 1, and Najee's more like 6 or 5, not 6. He's about 5. I guess he's more like 5 for me. But yeah, other than that, it's roughly the same. I have Dalvin Cook. I think exactly where you have him. Derrick Henry, I think, is in the same place. So it's roughly the same, but with a couple of similar. It's similar, I should say. And once again, looking sort of towards the future, I think that we're going to see a changing of the guard in some places. Ezekiel Elliott, I think he's sort of officially supplanted this year as the number 1 running back in Dallas. That's probably all of sort of the big name running backs. Probably the only one I think flat out sort of, I'm going to say loses his job. I think he'll still be playing, but I think he loses snaps this year. James Robinson loses some snaps, but I don't think he loses all of them. His workload will get cut into a little this year, I believe.
Okay. And then in terms of wide receivers, top 5 wide receivers, you have Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Stephon Diggs, TJ Moore, and Devontae Adams. Cooper Kupp is sort of in that top 7 to top 10 kind of range.
Sure.
But how do you kind of think the wide receivers kind of shake out?
I have Brown a little higher and DJ Moore a little, but not much lower. So basically, if you swap DJ Moore with like Tyler Lockett and move AJ Brown up a couple spots. But yeah, other than that, very much similar. And I like Robert Woods a little more, I guess, than the data does. I have him a slightly higher as well. But I think maybe injury hurt him. I don't know. But he's a guy that I think is going to continue to produce once he's back on the field.
Okay. And then tight end wise, data wise, Mark Andrews is number 1, George Kittle at 2, Kyle Pitts at 3, Travis Kelce at 4, and then Darren Waller at 5. Although
exact same players, slightly different order, but exact same players. I have Kelce a little higher. Pitts in the same place. I have Kittle slightly lower. And other than that, everything else I think is the same.
Tackle wise, so the top 5 tackles, again, this is more based on approximate value.
I love these guys. Slater and Wirfs. I think I have them swapped, but yes, give me that. Yes, I love it. Okay.
Yeah, so Slater at number 1, Wirfs at 2, Ryan Ramczyk at 3, David Bakhtiari at 4, and then Tyron Smith at 5. So those would be the top 5 tackles based on.
Switch the top 2.
Okay, I can see that. Guard wise, Quentin Nelson at 1, Royce Newman at 2.
I don't have Royce Newman that high. Royce, that's a surprise that he's that
high. Jonah Jackson at 3, Joe Patonio at 4, and then Damian Lewis at 5 in terms of the guards. So what would you because
so I have Newman. I'll go back and watch more Royce Newman. I don't have him that high. I have Everett Cleveland higher. A lot of it's the same. I have Cleveland about 5 or 6 spots higher. Mm-hmm. I have Royce Newman about 5 or 6 spots lower, and then the rest of it's pretty much the same.
Okay. And again, this is approximate value metric. So it's taking into account, if you go to Pro Football Reference, they kind of show you how they get to those points, if you will. But it's not the most perfect ranking system, but it is a little bit better than just looking at accolades like Pro Bowls and stuff like that.
Yeah,
for the most part. And then at center, top 5s, Corey Lindsey, Jason Kelsey, Alex Mack, Ryan Kelly, and then Garrett Bradbury for the top 5.
So I have Bradbury where you have Kelly. I have Mack where you have Bradbury. That's about it. The rest of it's identical.
Okay. So last sort of question before we wrap things up. Are there any rookies that could potentially end up in that top 5 area once the season's over?
I think at multiple positions there are. I truly believe that both Olave and London have a chance to do what Justin Jefferson did, and just pop onto the scene immediately and tell you, I'm here. I think that those amongst the offensive players, there's some defensive players who didn't get to defense who I think also, but I think that amongst the offensive players, those are the two. I think that amongst the quarterbacks, I don't think any of them will get enough snaps as rookies to really do that. I think if anyone's thrown onto the field prematurely, they'll look like they were thrown on the field prematurely. As you said, I think the tight ends are projects for the most part. I think Woods has a chance to be, maybe not, I think he has a chance more to be Mo Alley Cox than to be, to use another basketball player analogy, than to be, Graham. But I think he has a chance to be that for them, to be what they had in younger Mo Alley Cox. Running backs, I really like Rashad White's chance to be, I guess, fantasy relevant, I guess is the term you use, as a sneaky flex. Once again, those bye week situations, things like that. Pacheco in like a deeper, maybe sort of, if you're playing like a 16-team league, he might see some time in flex or something like that. Most of those guys are stashes. And of course the top running backs. Obviously the top couple of guys like Brees and Kenneth Walker III should see the field fairly early and have a chance to make an impact. I think those guys are the guys that come to mind for me.
Okay. All right. So this concludes the live stream today. I just want to thank you so much, Bill, for coming on. Where can people follow your work and get to know more about Bill Carroll in terms of?
So at this very moment, literally as we speak, I am in an all-time player draft for the NFL for the all-time misfits. So if you go to all-time misfits pod, you can follow the progress of the draft of that. I am working on a couple of articles, one for Around the Block Sports about the Washington Commanders botching the opportunity to honor some great Black Americans who are from or have connections to Washington, D.C. in the naming of their team, including my favorite, the Dukes, for Duke Ellington, a Washingtonian. And think of all the cool logo stuff they could have done and jazz stuff they could have worked in, but they blew it. And for Nuts and Bolts Sports, I'm going to write some stuff about the USFL. I'm going to pick, as we get closer to the end of the season, my all USFL team for this version of the USFL. And I'll even compare some of the current USFLers to the previous USFLers and the original USFL. And that's for Nuts and Bolts Sports. That's at Nuts and Bolts Sports. Oh, and for Zinni 62 Media, I am going to be doing a series. I'm already doing it. So I just finished the Falcons. The Giants are up. So that'll go up on Monday, talking about their cap situation, their undrafted free agent, and their draft class, who I think will stick, who I think will make an impact, and then what players they might be replacing who might be on their way out.
Okay. And then, as always, guys, I am Jimetrics Coburn. You can follow my work at Twitter at Jimetrics. And you can also go to my Patreon page at patreon.com/jcoburn, where you can get more in-depth data information about the season. I'm pretty close to putting up wide receiver, pretty much all the wide receiver depth charts, running back depth charts, tight end depth charts, and quarterback depth charts for the season. And then kind of focus more defense. So all of May was offense, and then June's going to be more defensive focus. So for guys that are in the interior defensive player positions, that kind of stuff. If you're looking to, so who's going to be the next TJ Watt, or just the guys that people were kind of low on, and then they ended up doing really well in terms of just getting points on the board as a defensive player. Then say pay attention to that stuff. So, but thank you so much, Bill, for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Again, the next
episode to have you on one of my shows soon.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So just let me know, and I can come on the channel over there. And then I think the next show we're working on is to have a live reaction to the 1989 NFL draft class.
Yes.
So we're going to be watching the draft class on YouTube. We're going to be reacting to it. Bill, of course, actually saw that draft class. I wasn't born yet, so I can't really say much about it other than the data. But the reason I wanted to do it is to give you the fact is the data that I do has historical foundations. And I think when you learn about why the numbers are the way they are, it's just not some arbitrary, it's not like I'm just picking the numbers from the sky and throwing them at you. There's a historical foundation to the numbers and the work that I do. And the best way to show that in many ways is to go back to a older draft class.
Yep.
Kind of show you, these guys became Hall of Famers, and this is what they did at the college level. And you kind of get that perspective from there. But again, thank you so much for coming on, Bill, and we'll definitely link up in the future.
Oh, I know we will. This has been, like I said, a distinct pleasure. I look forward to it. I look forward to having you on. So fans of my channel and the what do they call it, playlist or whatever you want to call it, my sub channel for Zinni 62 Media, I will be having Jim on. I plan to have some other people who, no one's like Jim, but people who have alternative ways of looking at player performances and how to assess them. But Jim's as good as it gets. So if you aren't following Jim and you follow me, fix that. Like, what are you doing? Especially if you're serious about understanding how and why football players actually work and which ones have the best chance to be successful, Jim's as good as it gets.